All right, this is our This League segment. Scott, director of social, whenever you're in the studio, you know we like to do this segment to capitalize on the fact that the NBA, more than any other league, provides drama and soap opera-like storylines. And this week's is about a couple of big men. One young, one not so young, Deandre Ayton, Clint Capela. Clint Capela wanted no part of it. He had no hand in pulling himself into this. Deandre Ayton brought him into it. The story being, as Dave McMenamin from ESPN reported, after a Lakers game last week, rare Deandre Ayton big game, he had 21 and 13 in a loss to Orlando, talks to reporters in the locker room. After he's done with this scrum, but while knowing the reporters are still in the locker room, clearly wanted them to hear it and wanted all of us to know he said it, said, "They're trying to make me Clint Capela. I'm not no Clint Capela." The idea here is that Ayton, former number 1 overall pick, someone who is expected to be a superstar big man, has been reduced to a role player who is expected to just kind of, screen, catch lobs, rebound, be a good big for Luka Doncic and LeBron James, which is the role that a guy like Clint Capela thrived in for years. It's the reason Clint Capela is still in the league after 12 years. So thoughts on this? Does DeAndre Ayton have a point? Is he just Clint Capela? What are your thoughts here?
Okay, this is such a hilarious quote and something that has garnered so much attention. You've got I think Shaq is clapping back at him. You've got all kinds of big guys, making a mockery of him for this. I do think this is a very interesting microcosm for his whole career, because you've got a guy that's come in so talented, uber talented, number 1 overall pick, but a guy that wants to play basketball on his terms. He wants to put in effort when he wants to put it in. And I think putting him up against Clint Capela is so interesting, because Capela is a guy that does the dirty work. He was a great rim protector for Houston, rim runner, sets great screens, really made a career out of just doing that, honestly, getting dunks and blocks, and a great career. And I made a ton of money, and he's done great knowing his role. DeAndre Ayton, on the other hand, is a little lost, he finds himself on this Lakers team on, I think, a minimum deal or something.
It was a cheap 2-year deal, okay. 2 years, $60 million, so $8 million a year. Second year is a player option, but for a former number 1 overall pick, he's not on a max, he's not on a mid-level, he's closer to the minimum than he is to those things.
Absolutely, yeah, it feels like a minimum deal. He is coming to this team to try to help them. They're getting him at a bargain for obvious reasons. The whole story, honestly, shout out to Dave McMenamin for the story, because it is very fascinating. But, this is a guy who, if he would buy into a role, could probably be where he wants to be at this point in his career. You know what I mean? Yep. And I think that maybe he isn't Clint Capela, but if you look at where his reputation is at from a basketball perspective, he could go a long way in making more money and being more attractive as a player if he would play like Clint Capela for a season,
Yeah, I think the thing that is ironic here, and the thing that DeAndre Ayton lacks the self-awareness and maybe the basketball IQ to understand, is that, hey, DeAndre, the Lakers wish you were Clint Capela. And to your point, you should wish you're Clint Capela, because guess what? You know what a Luka Doncic-led team needs out of a big man? Someone who can protect the rim defensively and, rim run and catch lobs and be a devastating pick-and-roll partner offensively. And right now, you're neither of those things. And to expand on that, in the modern game, if you're a big man who doesn't protect the rim defensively or space the floor offensively, you're lost. And that's kind of you right now, buddy. The fact that this guy has the audacity, given what he's done so far in his career, to put someone like Clint Capela down as if that's a role that's beneath him. One, you actually don't seem to have the skills necessary to play the Clint Capela role. And the things that you want to do, which is, I guess, just post up and be like a 2010 guy that gets the ball all the time. Guess what? If you were on a team that had to do that, had to feed you the ball and rely on you to be a top offensive option, you are probably playing on a 25-win team. If Absolutely. We're being, honest with ourselves. And that's something he apparently can't do. DeAndre Ayton is not able to be honest with himself.
Totally. And to your point, we have seen him try to be that in, Portland, and to a lesser degree in some of that time in Phoenix, which, to be fair, young big man, I'll give him a pass there in terms of learning the game. It takes a little bit longer for big guys typically to get into it. But we've seen what it looks like when he is just being full DeAndre. And it's just there is a middle ground somewhere, I'm sure, between DeAndre Ayton being a rim runner, and DeAndre Ayton being a guy who faces up and drives the basket and plays in the mid range and all that stuff. And I think seemingly the Lakers are trying to figure that out. Like, it seems like he's got a great ally in JJ Redick, and JJ Redick seems to be trying his best and being patient with him. And like, even in situations where, there's some details from the story about, pointing out when he's not quite giving the best effort, but also pointing out when he is. And it's like, he's such a frustrating player because he has games where he's got 15, 18 rebounds, 20 and 13. And it's like, he can do that. If he would commit to screening and diving and just rebounding, if he was like, these are the two things I'm going to care about, that would honestly, he's 27 years old. If he could put together a couple seasons like that, there's no telling where that could lead in his career. Because if you have this foundation, then sure, maybe teams are will let you pick and pop a little bit. Like, maybe you can add a little jump shot to your game. Maybe there's a little face up there we can add, but you have to have the foundation of something that is effective, and he just is flat out seemingly refusing to do it is really the thing.
He thinks it's beneath him. And I'm glad you mentioned too the parts in the story where they talk about JJ Redick maybe pointing out times when the effort hasn't always been there. This is another thing too. DeAndre Ayton is an inconsistent, low motor big man who it's like, he will, 1 out of every 4 or 5 games, play in a way that reminds you why so much was expected of him. But 80% of the time, he's not giving you that effort. And then the 20% of the time when he does, he can point to it and be like, oh, see? That's why I should be getting the ball, or that's why I should be this. It's like, no, but if you only do it once every 2 weeks, why should we believe it? And why should any coach or team invest in you like that? And if you compare DeAndre Ayton's career to Clint Capela's, I think it speaks volumes. We can put the numbers up, but sure, DeAndre Ayton scores more. That's fine because his role is supposed to be being able to do that. But for a pretty limited offensive talent, Clint Capela has managed to basically match Ayton's numbers across the board other than the raw point. And when you consider that DeAndre Ayton was the first overall pick and Clint Capela was a 25th overall pick, whom not much was expected of, look at those numbers and tell me which one has done more relative to expectations. And also look at the win percentage number where it's like, yeah, Clint Capela was never a star on those teams, but he was a very key contributor and key component, two-way component of some elite teams, perennial contenders, and that's why his career win percentage is what it is, and he was able to play that role in a contender, and DeAndre Ayton is like, a borderline 500 team player that doesn't seem to know what his role is. Before I cede the mic to you too, the thing I'll remind people is we're not just talking about, a first pick versus a 25th pick. We're talking about a guy who was the first overall pick in a draft that, had Luka Doncic, Trae Young, and Jaren Jackson at the top 2, but also later had Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Brunson, and Mikal Bridges, just to name a few others. And that guy's a 0-time All-Star through 8 years. And guess what, DeAndre Ayton? You're going to be a 0-time All-Star by the time your career is done, which, by the way, you should be happy if it's 12 years like Clint Capela's.
Honestly, and it's so because you're looking at if you're not the guy. So if you're DeAndre Ayton, you got drafted number 1 to the Suns before Devin Booker had kind of taken off. He had an opportunity there where he could have been a number 1, could have been a great number 2. Obviously, they made the run to the finals, and he was great that season. But they had Chris Paul as well, which I think is a big part of it. If you're not that number 1, 2, 3 guy, then you better start learning a role. There is no other area for you to be in, Clint Capela figured that out early, busted his ass. He's an all-star in his role, not a literal all-star, but he would be an all-star level role player. And it's just you can't, there's not a spot for everybody, It's you are either a star player or you play a role. That's how it works. You can't just be in this middle ground where it's I'd be a star if I had the ball all the time. And you're okay, maybe you can make that argument in years 1, 2, 3, but we're well into your career here. And if you don't figure it out, the Lakers are desperate, right? They have him, and Austin Reeves said, this guy raises our ceiling. This is what it comes down to. And if they ultimately can't figure out how to get you to be successful on a more regular basis, then I just who's going to be the team that steps in with the patience to be able to figure this out? Yeah,
well said. And basically, in summary, in conclusion, DeAndre Ayton, you're correct. You're not no Clint Capela, but that doesn't mean what you think it means.